If groups can rent the space after
Oh, sure. I think that they have a way of closing off because the bathrooms are still available, but they can close off the branch. I think that's kind of the pattern
point,
we've been
right?
doing with all of that.
Correct, that's where we're going.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
We're still working on the agreements, finalizing the draft agreements.
Yeah, that's it. I hadn't seen the new guidelines, but I was.
I want to tell you,
It
the
was
Cup House
just-
Library, they tried the gate out. It's like the gates of mortar, and that thing comes down. So it's a big difference from Capitola.
Right, it looks like we're ready.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order Monday, May 8th, and we're here at the beautiful new Bransford Branch Library. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Mount,
Here?
Commissioner Ripma, absent, Commissioner Woll.
Here.
Commissioner Wynne, absent, Vice Chair Dubin,
Present?
Chair Termini.
Here, thank you. Are there any additions to the agenda or deletions? Is
There were no additions or deletions to the agenda.
there a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved, second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Uh-huh.
And we'll carry on to oral communications. This is the time when members of the public can address the Library Advisory Commission on items not on our agenda. So I'll open it to the floor. No takers?
No, I'm just wondering if there were any members of the public who are not here who are accessing the meeting virtually. Do you have?
We have that ability as well.
Check that, yes.
Yeah.
First, we'll do public in the room and then we'll do check to see if there's any public comment.
Is there anyone
Thank you.
online who would like to speak to us?
There are no online public comments.
Okay, moving along. We'll go to our library director's report. Yolanda?
Thank you, Chair Termini. I've included my library director's report in your agenda packet for your review. Just a couple of items that I will highlight. I know it's been kind of a short period of time between our last meeting and this one, so a lot of things haven't changed. But one item that I do want to highlight is from our last budget session with the Library Joint Powers Authority Board. There was a question that we had brought to the Library Advisory Commission at our last meeting with regard to Capitola hours, Sunday hours. So the board did take into consideration what this body had sort of thought about that whole plan and agreed to move forward with the pilot program. So we will be doing a 6-month pilot program, trying to maintain Sunday hours. We'll see how that goes, survey the public, get more information about door counts once Atlas opens. And then we will make a decision after that time, which we would bring back to this commission before taking the final vote to the board. Another item that I'd like to call to your attention is we had a wonderful visit from the first partner at our Felton Library branch. It was really a wonderful day. Jennifer Seibel-Newson came out. She had the opportunity to tour the library, to hear about the teen programming that's going on. It was really wonderful because there was a teen program just beginning at the time that she got there. So she had a chance to interact with some of our teens and ask them questions about the programming that they get in our library teen space. And she had an opportunity to tour the DRC, the Disaster Recovery Center set up by FEMA. The FEMA DRC did close last Saturday, but it was served by numerous residents of the Felton and Scotts Valley community. And so we're really glad that we could provide that support for the community and have that open as well. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Rena?
Yes, I was curious if you need the commission here for any things like when the governor's partner comes or any other kinds of events, if there's some kind of mechanism to get the word out either for us or the public, for just more advocacy type.
So
things.
we typically would do that. And as you know, Commissioner Wynne and I met with Councilor Dawn Addis, Assemblymember Dawn Addis at the Capitola Library, which is her district. This particular visit from the first partner, they had reached out to me and they asked that we not publicize it until after she was here. For security reasons, they just wanted to make sure that she was safe. We did a number of walkthroughs and run-throughs with her team after a series of meetings. We had to assure them of who was going to be in the space on that day. Of course, we can't control patrons and that type of thing, but we did publicize it, and we reached out to the Felton friends and to community members in Felton and said, hey, we're going to have this special story time. We also reached out to our community partners and said, we're going to have special outdoor story time. Would you like to have your kids come? Right, but we did promote it. We had a lovely group of families who came with their children. Some of our friends at the library brought their grandkids. So it was just a really lovely program. So typically, yes, we would reach out to this body and say, hey, would you like to help walk through for those tours? In this instance, we did ask one of our friends at the library, Nancy Gert, who was very instrumental in planning Discovery Park. Along with that library project, we asked her to sort of give an overview. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. And so we kind of gave a really quick whirlwind, but she was able to be there with her grandchild. And we really did get a chance to show off our library and the Felton Discovery Park as well, which is where she read the story at. So, yeah.
Well, I wasn't saying that because I felt insulted. I wasn't invited, but as a mechanism for the future, like, we're here if you need us, and, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We definitely reach out, we'll be reaching out when those things come up. And then, of course, one last thing, which I didn't mention, but this, of course, Saturday is going to be grand opening here for Bransa 40 Library.
It's gonna be great. Let's see, we have no report from the Friends. Bruce emailed me and said he couldn't make it tonight.
Okay.
But he did give a great report at the JPA and some of the grant money that they've managed to secure and pass on. I have, in all the years I've observed the Friends, I've never seen them so productive, so vibrant, and active, and working in concert.
Absolutely. And I will just add that I know our friends in the library are extremely busy right now. They're gearing up for the new capital campaign for the downtown library. So we'll be looking forward to seeing that. We're working with the architect to determine what locations in the new facility would be available for naming opportunities. And then the Friends will be having a booklet that they can put out to the public. So anyone's welcome to take a look and participate in that campaign. And if you're interested, if there's anybody out there interested in assisting with their campaign, I know that they are looking for chair and vice chair for the fundraising committee. So please reach out to me or Bruce Cotter, the executive director, or Janice Driscoll, the president of the Friends of the Library, and we'd be happy to put you in touch.
And I think that Santa Cruz is getting ready to secure a pretty sizable grant to help bridge that particular program, that construction project. I mean,
Correct. Santa Cruz, City of Santa Cruz is going to be submitting for the infrastructure grant. May 18th is the deadline, so that should be going in the next week.
that's great.
Yeah.
Any members like to report on anything? I'm happy to report. I did it informally before the meeting started. I happened to be present on Thursday when all the lights went on in the Aptos Library. Not by virtue of PG&E, I might mention. But they were turned on to test and I can't even, I'll gush. It's just, the place looks great. I think, Carlos, you were there.
Yes.
And yeah, pretty impressive. Very nice. I attended the JPA meeting. I praised us all for delivery of cookies because that's one of the things we do best. And also we transmitted your one dissenting vote on Capitola, which was correct and had to be done. And they took the general commission's advice on going with the pilot program. So we'll see how that works out. They also, I believe, approved the budget with some audits coming down the line. So it was a wonderful meeting. Yeah. Let's move on to the consent calendar. It's taken as a single vote unless someone from the public or one of the commissioners would like to pull an item. We have the minutes of April 3rd and recent articles about Santa Cruz Public Libraries. So if no one would like to pull anything, I will look for a motion.
No motion.
A
Second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous for the consent calendar. We'll move on to general business and go to the link presentation. Sarah? This is a very exciting thing.
Good.
No, it is. You may think it's, boring library stuff, but no, this is library magic. Seriously.
Well, good evening. I'm happy to present to you Library Magic, otherwise known as a collections update. And included in that is a quick update as well about Link Plus and what that is and what we're looking at with Link Plus. So I wanted to start just with a snapshot of how our collection is. And this shows our circulation and turnover for the past couple of years. So you can see it starts in April 2021. I know that font is really small. This is data from a software system that we use called Collection HQ. And so they take our data from our collection and give us this really helpful information. So those purple bars indicate circulation, and you can see how as we're coming out of the critical months of the pandemic that our circulation is increasing. And then you'll notice the line is turnover. Turnover is the circulation divided by the number of items. And I suspect that it is dipping there because we have been purchasing so many new items, preparing for all of these branch openings that we've been experiencing. So we've been purchasing a lot for this branch, as well as the other branches that have been opening.
So that just skews the ratio.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then I didn't mention, this is for all of the collection. So all audiences, kids, teens, adults, and system-wide. And I did look to see if there were any, anything different showing for different audiences or different branches, and they all carry the same curve here. Okay, and another thing that we look at to kind of take the temperature of how we're doing with our collection is the dead on arrival. So the yellow indicates the number of items in our collection that we purchased and added to the collection that did not circulate within 1 year of being purchased. The purple is one circulation, and then the gray is more than one circulation. So the goal is to have your dead on arrival between 5 and 10%. If anything less than that, I mean, we could get to a 0 dead on arrival, but that would indicate that we're just purchasing the most popular items that are always going to circulate. And then anything more means that we're really not buying things that are helpful for our collection. But we always want to have a little bit of dead on arrival because that indicates that we're really selecting items to improve the breadth and depth of our collection. And then this is something that has been asked about before. So this shows the spending on our collections over the past 5 years on the physical items versus the digital items. So digital would include things like our reference databases, our ebooks, our audiobooks, the streaming video, and then the physical is everything, the books, the DVDs, the magazines, anything that we actually get in hand for the collection. So you'll see we had a big increase in our digital spending in fiscal year 2021 there. And that was because we had so many branches closed. So we really shifted a lot of our spending from physical to digital. And then we also had a lot of help from fundraising from the friends to spend more money on digital collections that year too.
And that includes digital that we take out on an app like Libby.
Yes,
So that's everything that's not in physical form.
yes,
Great.
exactly. So Overdrive, Libby, Canopy, Hoopla,
Right.
those reference databases that we've got on our research page are indicated there. And I suspect that in the coming years, we'll start to see the digital spending continue to grow. With these opening branches, we've been spending a lot more on physical materials to make sure we've got plenty on the shelves.
May I ask, is the digital, the what the Friends bought and all the digital, does that have to be renewed every year? Or is that just something that once it's bought, it's like in our collection?
Oh, that's a really good question, a complicated one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, lots of different licensing models that we get. So some things we pay for and we get for a certain amount of time or check out, and then some things we just subscribe to. So we just pay each year and we continue to get.
And I would add to that sometimes the Friends give us money. During the pandemic, there was a specific fundraising effort
Right.
for digital ebooks and e-audiobooks. And so the Friends raised, I think it was like $42,000 that went into digital because that's what it was allocated for. Although that's not repeated in the next year, right?
Right.
There, we always try and go out for grants, and then the state library is offering a number of programs as well that we try to participate in when we can, if it makes sense for our community.
My clicker isn't working anymore.
There you go.
Do it again, okay. There we go. Okay, so all these recent branch openings, of course, you're aware, but I just wanted to touch on each of these because it's been a really big lift for us to get those materials on the shelves. So the photos that I chose are maybe not the most beautiful photos of each branch, but I tried to choose a photo that showed empty shelves. Because that's what we were really focusing on. So this is the Boulder Creek Library. With each branch that has been opening or reopening, we're introducing a local history collection. So primarily books, sometimes DVDs, but that focus on that community's history as well as regional history. So they each have a dedicated shelving location. They don't float, meaning if they're returned at another branch, they'll come back to the Boulder Creek Library. And then we introduced the special sticker that we put on the spine of all of those books. Recently opened the Scotts Valley Library as well. And so they got a local history collection. And then we also did a refresh of their Special Needs Resource Center collection. So those are books that support families, parents, caregivers of special needs. And we are always refreshing that collection thanks to the help of the Scotts Valley Friends. Keep going. Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay. Live Oak Library. Again, they got a local history collection, and we were also really excited to introduce ukuleles for that collection as well. And then here's the Friends of 40 Library. So some of you just saw the branch, and this was a photo of the children's area before we put anything on the shelves. So we've got a mostly new collection for this library. We've been purchasing for the past year and a half approximately for this and storing it, and we've got it moved in, and we're just doing the fine tuning now to get ready for Saturday. Again, they'll also have a local history collection here. And we are already working on the collection for the Aptos Library. We've been selecting and ordering the books and media for that library, and we're doing things a little bit differently. Since it's an all new building, we're trying to get them an all new collection. We've been working with our print vendor who's located in Georgia. So they are actually keeping all of the books on site there. And then when we're ready, they'll ship them to the Aptos Library and then we'll
Directly.
just put them right on the shelves. Yep. Yeah, ordering is underway and continuing. We've spent a lot of money and we're excited to.
Extreme shopping.
Yes. So looking ahead to this fiscal year, one of the things that we're doing with the collections budget is we're augmenting it by spending out the McCaskill Trust for the Visually Impaired. And so that is a trust that the library has held since, I believe, the 1980s. And originally it was spent just on Braille books, but we're also spending it on large print books, audiobooks, both CD and those playaway devices, and e-audiobooks and ebooks as well, to support readers with visual impairment. And so you can see in that photo, hopefully, I know it's kind of small, but we put a book plate inside the front cover of each item that we purchased with McCaskill funds, just to indicate where the funding came from. Okay, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about Link Plus. So Link Plus is a service that we are considering bringing in the next fiscal year. And so it is a free service for patrons that allows them to borrow items from other libraries and participating libraries throughout California and Nevada. So it's mostly public libraries who participate. There are some academic libraries. There's a courier service that transfers the books and the media around from library to library. There's a piece of software that would integrate with our ILS system that we would use, that patrons could actually use to request items directly that we don't have in our collection. And the other way around, so patrons from other libraries could also see what they're searching in our collection and know if it's available or not. So this isn't really for new materials, so we'll always be buying those new and popular materials, but this is for more backlist things. A good example are those James Patterson titles. We really don't have room for all of them on our shelves. And they often are hard to get, but they're still in demand. So that would be a really good use of this. So a patron could search, see that we don't have it, but then they could get it within usually 4 to 7 business days from another library.
Does this include other libraries' digital collection as well?
This is just physical.
Just physical?
Yeah.
Okay.
So books, DVDs, audiobooks.
Okay.
Is it free?
It's free to patrons. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are some limits too that can be put in place. An account in good standing. I think there's a limit on how many things that they could borrow from Link Plus at one time. And they told me that there is some sort of algorithm that kind of helps with the load balancing so that when our borrows are somewhat kept in balance with the amount that we're lending, so that we're not overburdened with so many things that we're lending out to another library, for instance. But it does take resources. It takes some money. It takes some staff time. It takes the time of staff at the branches to be able to pull the items and then process them and put a special slip on them, sort them for the courier service that would come. And then also to handle the incoming materials to Link Plus. But we're looking at it carefully and considering it for the next year.
So I would consider it comparable to ILL, but you don't pay for it. Patrons don't pay. So you can order pretty much just like you would an interlibrary loan item, but you do it directly from the catalog, just as if you were searching for to place a hold in our system. You can place the hold within the catalog system, and then that is delivered to the library of your choice where you have your holds picked up here. A lot of patrons, I know Sarah's done a lot of research with other libraries that have this service. They find it extremely popular. It is also great if you are trying to supplement an international languages collection. So we do not carry a Farsi collection, but if you speak Farsi and you live in Santa Cruz, this gives you an opportunity to go to that catalog and order from another library that has Farsi titles available, and those could come here for you to be able to use, which makes this a really great opportunity for bringing equity, diversity, and inclusion to our library system.
And are all libraries in California and Nevada participants, or they're coming on little by little?
Not all are. I actually originally participated in the pilot. The state library, when they first opened this, the state library gave you money to sign up. So a lot of libraries signed up initially. And then after that, you can get on, as Sarah talked about, there are some sunk costs that you have to put into this for getting on into the system. There's an annual software charge for updating and maintaining the software, and then the courier service. There are specific bags that we use to pack things in when we're shipping them, so they get to the right location. But yes, that's something we're hoping, and I keep advocating that the state library give more money for this program. Again, it's a great resource for libraries to not have to put a whole lot of money into buying new books. And Sarah was showing you in the collection HQ, the dead costs, right? So we could order that one book you want, Mike, and you're the only person that wants it, and it's gonna sit on our shelf, right? And we've just purchased it for one person to use, and then it's sitting on the shelf, versus it could be going out to other library users.
Sure.
At another library even, but we're gonna have people here who want to borrow from that library. And so it really sort of balances out in the end. Yeah.
And this is the end of my presentation, but I'm happy to take questions.
Questions, Rena?
I have a few here. I just wanted to say that, I know the Garfield Park local history, that is, I love where you put it. It's very interesting, and it always takes me longer in that library just because we kind of get suckered into the local history section. So I think that's just a really great feature. And I haven't seen it at the other libraries yet, but I'll definitely look out for it. So thank you. I'm also very excited about the Link Plus, because I did use the interlibrary loan a long time ago, but it did cost money per book. And I ended up just going to San Jose and joining their library, Morgan Hill, just to be able to get the books that I had needed. So I'm really excited. I think a lot of families will really appreciate this. If you're doing a paper on something kind of more obscure, it's very helpful. I'm curious, you said that you have a new collection for Aptos and a new collection for this library. I know that B40 used to have a really great parent and educator collection, like in the kids, it was in the kids section, and it was very specific towards parenting and things. So I'm just curious, like, are you theming each library for kind of specifics like that? And also, what happened to the old collection that used to be here? Did you kind of leave those out, or are they somewhere else?
Good question. Well, first, we have a parenting collection here, just books about parenting topics, and it's in the kids' room, so it does still exist. The books that were here, we spent weeks going through this collection and actually touched and looked at every book and sent a lot of them to other branches. And then a few things we did store. So it's not an entirely new collection, but mostly new collection.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you theme, because I just remember that everyone was like, oh, Brancifortius, they have the best parenting books. Like, do you kind of theme it that way, or is it just, was that just our perception? I wasn't really sure.
Well, we have a floating collection, so we haven't done a theme here necessarily. We really tried to just look at the community and bring in books that are reflective of everyone in the community.
Okay.
And then there's room to grow. I mean, that's one nice thing, is that we'll probably get a lot of new patrons using this library. And then we'll get to see what it is that they're interested in when they request things and return it here. That'll help kind of develop what's on the shelves here as well.
Because of the floating collection, the branches start to reflect the community's needs, don't they? And speaking of floating collections,
Oh, that's
how
true.
often do you normalize it? How often do you, reshuffle? the book?
Rebalance.
Rebalance. Right, I was looking for the term. I know there's a librarian term in there somewhere.
I've got Sarah working on that right now. Capitola, we have a rebalancing issue because so many people use Capitola Library. A lot of books get checked out from that location. A lot of books get returned there, but we don't have the shelf space. So we have to rebalance the collection. The software that Sarah was showing you here, Collection HQ, can assist with that.
Oh.
Collection HQ can read your collection and say, hey, James Patterson, don't send it to Aptos, it's not gonna circulate there, send it over to Brands Authority, right? And then it will even tell you the titles that will circulate at Brands Authority. So that's a piece of the tool that we haven't been using as robustly, obviously because we've been closed. But now that Capitola is taking on this big chunk, and we'll see what happens when Aptos opens, right? That might shift some of that rebalancing need. But right now we're going over to Capitola. And so Sarah is pulling some of the excess from Capitola and bringing it over here to supplement, right? And one of the things I think that Sarah didn't talk about, she talked a little bit about, you know, when we close a branch, we go through the materials, things that are grubby, things that have reached the end of their useful life. We let those go, and whether that's turning it over to the friends so they can sell, or returning it to, we have a Discover, or not Discover Books, we have Better World Books. So we have, if the book is in saleable condition, there's certain titles Better World will take, we pack those up, we get reimbursement, we pay for part of Collection HQ with that reimbursement for what we send back to them, right? When it's reached the end of its useful life here. But the books that are then stored, we don't want to store too much, especially if it's timely, like medical books. You want it within the last 2 years. You don't want to store something for 2 years and then pull it back out and say, oh, here's a fresh book for you. It's out of date, right?
There's no book on leeches.
So that's where we want to make sure that whatever we are storing will stand the test of time. So it's not going to be typically your nonfictions with medical or health, those types of things. And so that's where they have to supplement by purchasing new. But at Capitola, because we've got these big collections, we can go over there and we know we have a lot of stuff that's newer and we can use it to supplement here. And then eventually, you're correct, when this one opens, the neighborhood will use that. Like you talked about the parenting collection being so great here. It's probably because there were a lot of parents here. They were like, hey, I'm returning my parent book to you. And it was going on the shelf here. And then another parent walked in and said, this is phenomenal. And they checked it out. And so on and so on. So as Mike, as you said, the neighborhood will begin to kind of, your collection will begin to reflect kind of the neighborhood needs.
Interesting.
Yes.
What about the collection in general? How do you call the collection just for keeping it up to date? And does your library program look at it and something that hasn't been taken out for 18 months starts to get pulled? I mean, what's the process, and how many books really get pulled out and just moved one place or another? And a carryover question to that is, are we ever going to have the delicious book sale at the Civic Auditorium again?
The book sale, I think, was the
That was
Friends.
Friends.
So the Friends and the downtown Friends, I think specifically, since downtown doesn't technically have a chapter, it's the executive Friends.
Right.
They, I think, have determined that it's not really, it's Capitola makes a lot of money off of their bookstore. And so a lot of the Friends will be like, here, Capitola, take the books, because then that generates money.
Right.
Scotts Valley is selling books in their lobby. They have their quarterly book sales. And they raise some revenue. They recognize it's not a whole lot of money, but it is something. Felton is also using the book cart to sell but they have not gone back to doing quarterlies. It just isn't the amount of work that goes into setting up for the sales,
Sure.
Tearing them down. They're not making enough money off of it. They're finding that there are better, more efficient and effective ways to raise money.
So no more books by the pound.
You can go to Scotts Valley Friends on their last day. They're selling them. Yeah.
That's great.
Bring your bag.
That
Load up.
was one of the most delicious parts of that sale. It was just amazing.
And I'll let Sarah answer the rest of it on how she goes through the collection.
So our team of selectors who select the materials for the libraries also lead we call it weeding the collection. So we use Collection HQ to run reports, and they'll run for us several different kinds of reports. One of them is a grubby report. So it'll identify items that have surfed a number of times within the past year that are likely starting to look really worn and should probably be evaluated for replacement. There's also a dead list, so we can set up our targets for that as far as if a book has not circulated a certain number of times within the last however long. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's more like 3 years, depending on what it is. And so those will show up on a list, and so then selectors can identify either, oh, that one's got to go right away, or these are ones that I want to see. So they'll call them in and then they'll have them on a cart and they'll actually do a hands-on look at them and determine what condition they're in, how many we have in the collection still, if we have an appropriate number. So we do have a limited number of, or a limited amount of shelf space. So for every book that comes in, we kind of have to make sure there's room for it on the shelf. So we do pull quite a few things out of the collection on a regular basis.
Right.
And again, first they're given a chance, of course, to go to another branch, or maybe they just need a new spine label or a new cover, something like that. We do some minor mending, nothing too big. But then if not, if they're just not suitable for our collection, if they're outdated, they'll go to Better World Books. But some things just have to go to the dumpster. They're just very outdated
Recycle.
and really bad.
Recycle.
Recycle dumpster. Yeah.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to make any comments? Yes, sir.
A couple of questions. One on this topic you're just talking about. There are a number of books in the collections of the whole system that are valuable books that I check out periodically just to make sure that they're circulated, because they're books that I reference a lot. If one of those books should be determined to be culled, I'd be unhappy about that, because I wouldn't have access to that book anymore. Is there any way that you can notify the public of a list of books that are subject to being culled beforehand, and we can weigh in on that to tell you how valuable that book is to us?
Oh, that's a nice idea. We really go by our collection development policy, which also outlines when we get rid of a book. I think that's really good feedback for when we look at that policy again. I can't say, I think it would take a lot of staff time to do that, though. We're handling many materials every day,
Certainly.
but I like the idea.
Yeah, I do too. Even if book is if you have a book that is in such bad shape, you decided to recycle it, I would love to have it. I mean, if it's that book that I've used a lot for research. So, my other question, over the last few years, as I'm using the online catalog, I very frequently come across an entry that says this item is not available. It's in the catalog. It says it's there, but then it's not available. And I'm assuming that's because of the closures of some of and storage. And I'm hoping to see that this happens less frequently now as books are put back into circulation.
It absolutely will. So especially once we get the Aptos library open, we should see much less of that.
Good.
It was, one of those difficult things that we had to do in order to build these collections, but not yet have them available for request.
Yeah, I've been very patient, so.
It's been hard.
I would just add this, if there's a book that you feel like, hey, I would love to have this book. And you look at it when you're in our library and you've checked it out and you're like, yeah, this is looking like it might be going to the grubby list, right? It's the pages are yellowing, it's getting worn. Please feel free to go up to the library branch manager and just say, hey, here's my name, here's my number. Can you check with the collection development department? If this is a book that they're going to read, please let me know. I would love to make a donation to the Friends to get this book, right? Because I think then that's a great way for us, although Sarah's correct, it would take an enormous amount of work for us to publish a list of everything that we are going through and deselecting on a regular basis. I think if there's something specific that, especially a title that you work with and you research with pretty regularly and you think you might want it, please let us know. And then we'd be happy to have Sarah's team evaluate it and notify you.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Yes. please.
I had thought about older books that are out of date. And here is the way that I use older books that are out of date. I find them to be historical. Let me give you an example. In the 70s, after I had graduated from college and I was very engaged in watershed management, there were a lot of books in the 70s written about watersheds, what I'll call bioregional perspectives, and especially in terms of Santa Cruz County, where residents are trying to learn how to live in this place without destroying it. Some of the best books were written in the 70s, and they were, I think they would be called environmental books. And many of them were, some of them were academic, some of them were books who were, say, edited for several academic papers in a book by an editor who cared about something. Fast forward 50 years, now environment has become, in the popular notion, has become all about climate change. So species extinction due to mechanical destruction, not climate change, has fallen to the wayside. And the new books that are coming into the library about environment are all about climate change. But in point of fact, that's climate change is real, but environmental destruction is plastic in the ocean and overfishing and the loss of habitat. And so I'm concerned that those books of the 70s, which is what we really, really need to be thinking about going into the future, they're no longer being written only climate change. How can you stop, using fossil fuels? And so that's my concern about culling books that seem out of date, because they're not. And I don't know if you've had anybody pass those thoughts on to you, but I'd like to just plant that seed in terms of culling. Just because a book is old and was written in 1971 or 1969 or even 68 or something, it may be very pertinent to how our community can be educated to make wise decisions for our bioregion. Thanks. Thank you.
And thank you for reminding me that books that I read in the 70s are now considered historic. I'll just take that face value. Do we have anybody online?
Yeah, there is a public comment from Judy, and while I believe you may have already answered it, I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud for the record. She asked, what happens to the collections that existed in the newly renovated branches?
I think we answered that, but go ahead, you can speak to it as well.
Okay,
So
sure.
reiterate a little bit.
Sure. So for all the branches, we did something a little bit different, but we did look at and evaluate all of the collections in each of the branches right before they closed and right after they closed. And some of those collections were stored. Some of those collections were given to other branches who had room on the shelves. And some of them were determined to be outdated, no longer relevant, and in poor condition. So those ones we got rid of.
Got it. Thank you. Yes, Rena.
I'm sorry, I just had one more question. Is theft a problem with the physical materials? And like noticeable on the charts and things?
It is, I don't know that I would say that it's a problem. It does exist. But we do our best, but it's part of being a public library too, is that things always go missing. Things are checked out and never returned. Yeah.
And that's in your software, it kind of figures that out, so those items can be
rebought, or how do you deal with that?
We do. Selectors get a report each
Okay.
month of items that we no longer have. Like the record still exists, but the item is in an either missing or lost status. And they'll determine whether to repurchase it or not. And we look carefully at holds as well. So if there's something that we maybe only have one copy left of, and we've got a holds list, we pay close attention to that as well and order more as needed.
It's great. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
You librarians are actually scientists.
I know.
There's some library science.
Okay, all you technology wonks, get ready, because Carlos Silva is going to give us a report on the IT department.
Yes, so this might not be as exciting as a collection EQ. Hopefully it's informative. So my name is Carlos Silva. It's my first time before you. So so I do have it's a 3-year technology plan. I wanted to give you might be helpful to give you a little bit about my background, and then maybe cover a little bit of what's gone on in the last year in IT, and that kind of, sets you up for why this technology plan, why it's structured that way. So I came from the city side. I was there about 17 years, close to 17 years or so in IT. And then I moved to the library. It's been a year this month, actually just a few days ago. So what's happened in the last year since I started here? So that time has been spent building the IT team, basically. So we have 6 staff members currently. So we have 2 programmers, 2 network and systems administrators, and then a senior technician specialist and 1 entry technician. Currently recruiting for 1 more senior technician. So it's been recruiting, interviewing, hiring over the last year, and then also a lot of upgrading, kind of assessing the environment, and then also doing upgrading the hardware. We talked about end of life for collections material. Well, a lot of our hardware is end of life at the library. So we've been slowly started to replace some of our hardware, as well as upgrading software versions. So, everything's changes very quickly in technology. So we've been focusing a lot on that. Also opened 3 libraries since I started. I think it's Garfield, Scotts Valley, and then Live Oak as well, and then French Woody. So we've been busy. Couple of other things, upgrades the virtual infrastructure. So a lot of our servers live in a virtual environment on site. So that is been upgraded to whole new equipment because we had really old equipment. So I've been doing that. Also, one big project has been moving our ILS system, which is the core of the library system software, into the cloud. So that was pretty recent, back in March. So that was a big lift that involved everybody in the library. So that's some of the stuff that's been happening over the last year. It's been busy year. So so the technology plan kind of starts from there. There's a lot more. Here's schedule I'll cover. We'll talk a little bit about the vision. And then a little bit of principles and assumptions. I'm not going to read everything in there, but I'll give you a snapshot of that. And then we'll talk about okay, what are we doing the next 2 years? What's the plan? And like I said, a lot of it stems from where we're coming from. So kind of upgrading our infrastructure, addressing some security and cybersecurity stuff. So I'll go over that. Okay, so vision. So it's kind of helpful to have a vision so you kind of know what direction to take. A lot of the vision for this is centered around the library's strategic master plan, right? So, and that has to do a lot with, bridging the digital divide, making sure that technology is accessible to patrons and useful to staff, So that's our vision. That's part of what we do in IT, and so kind of our guidance for that. And so, in that context, and in the context of like, hey, let's get things up to date, right? What we're hoping to achieve in the next 3 years, are those components. I'm gonna talk about those individually, but one of those is, updating, modernizing our public website. So the website's pretty important. It's, you know, you're at home or even in the library, that's the first thing you go to. So it's there's a lot of development that's gone into it. There's a lot of complexities in it, but I think there's a lot more improvements that can happen to it. So we're gonna focus on updating the look and feel of that website. Also making it, you know, applying some new security stuff to it. There's technology to change it. So there's you know, new security components to add and making it easier for patrons and staff to use. So that's one thing. Talked about end of life equipment. Most of the computers at the library are anywhere from 8 to 10 years old. So in technology that is ancient, right? So there's a plan to replace those. And then also replacing our wireless infrastructure. So talk a little bit more about that as well. And the last thing is cybersecurity awareness program. So cybersecurity is important. It's one of those things that just keep changing. There's new methods of attack. So we need to kind of implement something to help staff become more aware, more educated about how to, you know, how to protect our environment, our computers. So that's the vision. Technology. Okay, so principles and assumptions. Like I said, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but the assumption is that it's IT's job to facilitate, you know, a good technology environment that's accessible, available, it's resilient for not just staff, but also for patrons. So the assumption is that, you know, we're taking on that responsibility as an IT group to make sure that that stays in place or continues to improve. And one way to do that is to align with staff, make sure that we're communicating to vendors when projects are happening, that, you know, where we want to be, and making sure that information is clearly so that we can deliver the best services, you know, that align with the library's master plan. So, I think there was one thing in here, and sorry, this text is pretty small. Yeah, so making sure that you know, we're aligning with all stakeholders. So it's not just the staff, it's this committee, joint power board, patrons. Okay, so I talked a little bit about this already. So the public website redesign. So, you know, we are kind of one of the goals here is to, you know, kind of modernize our website and just sort of rebrand and make sure that the you know, that our image and message that the library holds comes across. And so part of this redesign project to ensure that you know, that is really, so there's objectives and activities that go along with each of these goals. Those objectives, you know, are you know, things that you know, activities are going to change based on when the project starts, basically, but these are going to be our guiding principles as we go along. Yeah, so website redesign is going to be a, you know, complex endeavor. So it's going to take all the library staff. It's going to take committees getting together and trying to make sure that we have a product that's gonna be useful for everybody and also, stays aligned with the image that the library wants to project as well. I talked a little bit about the computer replacement strategy. So, we have about 115 or so public workstations. So, as far as computers go, we have public computers. These are computers that when you walk into the library, you see them out on the floor. There's also some laptops that the public can use. And then, on top of that, we also have the workstations that the staff uses along with laptops as well. So when we talk about tackling this computer replacement strategy, it's going to be a multi-year, couple-year effort. So right now, we've actually already started replacing some of the staff computers. But over the next 2 years, the goal is to replace staff computers, including laptops, as well as public computers, but then also initiate this cycle of a 4-year replacement strategy so that we're not having computers that are 8 to 10 years old, and then spending a lot of time trying to fix them because they're, breaking. So we want to, have modern equipment and that's reliable. And so one way to do that is to have a plan for it. And so that plan is to actually have a strategy. And so this is to initiate a 4-year replacement strategy for the library for both public and staff computers. So the wireless infrastructure. So currently, all libraries have wireless access points. We were at the Aptos library trying to figure out where they were all going to go, right? So our wireless infrastructure, probably 90 access points altogether. There's also some management hardware and software that goes along with it. One we're currently using, we probably had for about 8 years ago. We started 8 to 10 years in technology. That's a long time as well. The standards change for it. The security capabilities change for it. Change as well. So the plan here is to, come up with a strategy and come up with a product that's going to bring us to the modern age. That's more resilient and more secure wireless access points. The library's wireless infrastructure is pretty complex, because we need to have a public Wi-Fi, and then we also have a staff Wi-Fi that serves a lot of people. So planning and having a good strategy for this is going to be crucial as we go around and replace all the equipment for it. So, but something that is necessary. Okay, so one of the things that we don't have at the library is a cybersecurity awareness training program. So what this is a program to continually educate staff on what to look out for. There's things like password management, what are some good password techniques, how often should you change them, why. There's also phishing attempts, somebody sends you an email. So a lot of that stuff we know, but there's new tactics, new techniques. And so I think having an educated staff that knows what to look for is just going to add to the resiliency and security of our library infrastructure. So this involves, starting a program that, it's going to, I guess the way I picture it is it's going to be, sort of a periodic quizzes and things that the staff will take, and just continuing education and training to help everybody be aware of some of the latest threats. So not something we have now. There's a lot of good products out there. I think it's something that's pretty easy to implement and something very necessary. So that's the last item on my list there. So, not too complicated, right? So just kind of building on top of what we started over the last year or so. These projects are not simple, some of them are more complex than others, but I think over the 3 years, it's something that's doable, and necessary.
All very exciting. Richard, any questions? Yes.
Yes.
I'm just curious, how do you survey the public in regards to their needs and wants for IT?
Yeah, so, that's a good question. I've been here that long. A lot of the feedback I get usually will come in the form of maybe an email or just feedback from other, like library staff. I don't know if we have a mechanism in place to get, I guess, other than, getting an anonymous sent email, saying, hey, wireless network just isn't working reliably, something like that. But, I don't know if we have a good way to get feedback from the public.
So, yeah, so that's one of the things that we're going to begin this fall is we want to, again, along with that, surveying about the hours and what, kind of hours would you like to see? Asking questions specifically about our IT services are also helpful. We do know that we've heard from patrons, they like the Wi-Fi hotspots. We know we hear from, and Carlos, usually myself and Carlos will get emails regarding, hey, I think your system is running slow, or there's something not working correctly. And so that's really been a big determinant of just since I've been here. I've really, and hired Carlos that I've said, let's get our system up to date, our infrastructure, right? Because if your infrastructure is behind, even down to the wire in the buildings, right? If we've got old cable, and it's funny because I just replaced my cable at home last couple of weekends ago, cable internet went out, but it was the wire, right? The wire had gone bad. So I have the router and we bought brand new routers. We went out for a scenic grant. We got new routers for some of our buildings, but the wire's bad. And so you're not going to improve signal if you don't rip out the wire and replace the wire as well. So those are the big infrastructure projects that we're trying to get in place. From there, we can then begin to survey the community about what their needs are. We know that during the pandemic, we did some boosting of signal outside the building, right? Because our buildings were closed. However, we also know we live in neighborhoods and we want to be good neighbors, right? So we don't want to boost a signal where, and just using this as an example, we have people camped out on the sidewalk because they want to use the Wi-Fi signal all night and the neighbors are upset about that. So we're just trying to be very cognizant of that and be good neighbors in the neighborhoods that we're in.
Yeah.
On that subject, can you turn down the system
Yeah.
after hours? Because our law enforcement Capitola has issues with sketchy people parked in the parking lot right up against the building doing, we're not sure, but has that been thought of?
The current system does allow for that. I think part of why we're looking, or I'm hoping to replace that infrastructure is to make it more flexible. I mean, the way that the current wireless infrastructure is set up now is sort of an all or nothing. And so not a change, maybe one change doesn't apply to all the libraries.
Right.
So the way it's set up now is it's more of a all or nothing approach. And that's one of the things I hope to make the change as we design and implement the new wireless infrastructure. But to answer your question, yes, it's possible.
I'm sorry, did you have another question?
No, I go good. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Rena?
Yeah, just on that, I use the Wi-Fi after hours.
Yes, you do.
I know. Just, and it was because like our power's gone out sometimes, and so then, I've had kids who've been in school, and so it's like scrambling just to find, everything's online, so, I've actually found it in the pandemic incredibly helpful, and just, randomly just very helpful to have that extra boost, so I don't know what the solution is.
I'm always reluctant to even bring that up. Because it's in tension with our public service versus our paranoia.
Right.
It's a strange balance.
Yeah, no, it's a good point though, because it's just trying to find that balance. And knowing that it's a service, outside the library hours, but also making it something that's secure.
Right.
Most secure for staff, protecting the library's network. And then also, as secure as we can make it for something that's public, when it's an open wireless network. So one of the goals of, getting new equipment is to be able to deploy that, meeting those types of goals. But that is kind of some of the feedback we do get from the public is, hey, we like to use it even when the library is closed. So being able to kind of work with that a little bit. Yeah.
Question?
Yeah, I have questions, being the IT wonk.
I know you've been excited.
So these old workstations, what OS are they?
They actually were Windows 7. They've been upgraded to Windows 10.
Okay.
So if you walk in a library, you just see Windows 10, but they're sitting on a, 7-8-year-old workstation.
Ancient.
So, yes, yeah.
So as far as like planning the, replacements and such, are you sticking with Windows? Are you looking at things like Chromebooks, or is that an option?
So we do have Chromebooks that we lend out to the public, but as far as like workstations and laptops that the staff uses.
Staff one thing, but public,
And
like
public,
on the public ones is a Chromebook a possibility?
workstations will still be Windows 10. Chromebooks is a possibility now, in the sense that we have them available. And so some of those were purchased through grant money. So I think I foresee being able to continue to do those kinds of things with Chromebooks, for example. So, but as far as the replacement and what we're focusing on for replacements, they'll be Windows workstations, Windows 10. Not quite ready to move to Windows 11 yet,
11?
but yeah.
And then Wi-Fi, I'm just curious about, how do you go about that when you're trying to assess, a brand new system and different things? Is that done internally? Do you?
Yeah, some of it is just internal knowledge, like, so for example, Wi-Fi 6 is out. I know that Wi-Fi 6 allows for dual streamings, which is more efficient than what we have now. So some of it's just internal knowledge, and then knowing what to look for, doing research, doing some research online. We also engage vendors. When we engage them, we hear their presentations. We get to learn a little bit more about the latest products. So a lot of that happens in that context. And then also pairing that with what we know what our environment can handle or not do, or where we want it to go. So a lot of it's internal assessment, coupled with vendor knowledge and latest information.
And is the current one, is it all Xfinity, or is it?
We use a product currently for Unify. It's called Unify, Ubiquity. So they're wireless access points and controllers there.
Thank you.
And with as busy as our libraries are, I know that bandwidth has been a problem,
Yeah.
especially after school. You get a crush, and I've noticed even in the few branches I've watched in their progression that the Aptos library is significantly more bandwidth for the users. You could fill that building up with people.
Yeah.
And you have it.
Yeah.
Where even Capitola, only a couple of years old, has some latency.
Yeah, so those are kind of some of the issues that we're trying to fix. And so, like, for example, Wi-Fi, our current Wi-Fi standards only allow for a single stream.
Right.
So everybody's sharing one stream, that you're gonna feel the latency. There's a lot of people there. With some of the newer technology like Wi-Fi 6, you can have multiple streams. So that is to address some of those issues. And we know that there's some latency problems during specific times in specific libraries.
Right.
So that's meant to address some of those problems.
Great.
And I will just add to that, we're also looking at, we participate in the Digital Navigators program where people can call. We want people to get Wi-Fi at home. If they can get Wi-Fi at home, we want them to be able to get Wi-Fi at home. And the state library, the Digital Navigators program that we participate in, you can call the phone number. They will help you out with, if you qualify and can get free or low cost internet at home.
That's
They will
great.
get you set up, right? If you need a device, they'll tell you where close to you can you get a device. Some of those Chromebooks that we have, we check out as part of that program. There might be Chromebooks or laptops available with hotspots. that you can check out. And so we're trying to supplement for our community in the best ways that we can. We're working, I just heard from Tricia this morning, they're going out for another grant. They've asked us to support that. We do. We want everybody in Santa Cruz County to have full and unburdened access to internet, with no throttling. I have to tell you, I've seen some throttling even at my house, and I'm like, because I don't use cable, I stream, or I am on the computer for just about everything. And I see it when it starts slowing down and why are you throttling me? What are you doing? Right, so high-speed broadband is an initiative that we support wholeheartedly, and we believe everybody should have access.
Anyone online?
There are no online public comments.
Anyone? Yes, sir. Oh, sorry.
First of all, guys, thanks for taking on this project.
That was it.
God, they really think about. I'm mostly concerned about the website redesign. And I hope that you'll be able to do some public survey on how we use that feature, that service, because that's where the public mainly gets the internet part of the library. And the reason I say that is because from the infrastructure standpoint, we want to have the very latest machines. We want to have the very latest software, the very latest security setup. But out in the real world, outside the walls of the library, you're talking about all kinds of different computers, various ages, various software. Not everyone can afford the very latest computer with the latest upgrades on it. And I'm finding now this year that there are a lot of websites that I can't get to anymore on my standard setup. I have a computer, the computer I use every day is 2011. And it doesn't have the very latest software on it for the browser. But I can get to most everything, but lately now I've not been able to because of the upgrades in HTML. And so I'm hoping that as you do your software design or your website design, that there is some way that you can accommodate the people who don't have the very latest software available to them and can't afford to get new.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of complexities to planning this. We do have at the library now internally a change management team. And so that will help kind of think through those scenarios. I think when we get to it, it's kind of hard to talk about it like in much detail now until you start actually thinking about all the components and engaging different groups. But that's good feedback. So appreciate that.
Sure.
And we would have community engagement around that once Carlos and his team and do the initial wireframe, so to speak, of the website. Then they would take those ideas out and again, have some community conversations around that. We'll have conversations with staff around that to make sure that we're trying to meet the needs of most people. We recognize we may not be able to meet everybody's needs, but we want to try and make sure that we're at least thinking about it from a variety of perspectives.
Yes.
I have a quick question and a comment. Where does the library server or servers live?
So currently most of our data center is downtown.
Downtown.
It's at the downtown library.
In the downtown library now?
Yes.
Yeah.
We do have servers spread out on each of the libraries. So
how many servers total?
So each library has one server, at least one
Okay.
server. And actually that is another project that we started already, is to replace those servers at the individual libraries, because those are end of life as well. That's a grant that we received as well. So we started that project. So yeah, we have a lot of servers.
Okay.
A lot of it's gone virtual, at least the stuff in the data center. It's all virtualized because it's just more efficient that way, easier to manage. There's more redundancy to it.
When you
But
say virtual, do you mean you're using somebody else's server?
no, it's so you hear about the cloud?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So-
The cloud is,
Yeah, so we have
it's
a,
not up
we
there.
have our own cloud
Yeah.
in the
Okay.
library, and that's what I
Okay.
when I say virtual. Yeah.
Okay. Then my comment is, you talked about redesigning the library website. I'm not an IT mom, but I'm quite competent in terms of computer use. I used Windows when I was working for the Santa Cruz Port District. I do not like Windows personally. I've always had a Macintosh, but that's my bias.
Yeah.
But in terms of functionality and intuitiveness, I think for me, keeping it simple
Mhm.
is the most important thing. Less colorful graphics, less flashing things. It's almost as though there's a thought that the public has to be entertained going to the public library website to get information about something.
Yeah.
And a simple page with a simple, clear menu, consistent either at the top of the page or at the bottom of the page. So that with those clickable links that each go to a web page. For me, that's my druthers on that. I'm also wondering about when you design and think about designing, Yolanda said she uses her home computer. I do too. I have I recently had to purchase, I got one from Gray Bears, a new 2015,
Yeah.
which was exciting for me because I had an old computer that I couldn't get to many websites on anymore. But I use my laptop 2015 at my desk in the morning, shut down during the day, in the evening. I don't use a cell phone, but I notice that when Michael is designing websites, I will often say, there is a way to say, see what it looks like on a cell phone. And it's just amazing. Doing stuff on a cell phone is completely different than doing something on the screen, which you all know, right? So are you going to be designing for, since everybody seems to use a cell phone for they're plugged into it when they wake up and they sleep.
Yeah.
Are you going to be trying to do it for a cell phone or for those of us who use a desktop computer and or both?
Yeah, so on the first comment, I agree with you as far as simplicity goes. I think the easier it is to navigate and find things that you need, the better. So as far as the website design, so those are separated out. And actually, even in our existing iOS system, if you use it on your phone, it actually takes you to a different link. So they'll be designed separately. Look and feel, what you can access will be the same. You should be able to have the same functionality on your phone as, some things are harder to format for the phone, but that's part of what goes into a website design, making sure that, iPhones and Android phones can access the page just as efficiently. So those are often treated separately and designed separately.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the public? Rena, you had a follow-up, didn't you?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's okay. I had written down just, we're a great group for beta testing for the
Okay.
website. If you ever, when you get to that point that that's kind of the kind of thing we're designed for. So feel free to reach out at that time. And the other thing I just wanted to say is that we discovered the printers and we're just so happy. And my oldest is 22 and, without like the phone and a laptop and the printer and no printer,
Yeah.
And so we just have been really thrilled that I know you say like how old everything is, but my experience in the last 6 months or year has been really, really great with the computers, specifically downtown and the printer access. It feels very secure and that people have been really knowledgeable to help. And it's just been a really kind of amazing feature for our family. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, no, we talked a little bit about, I mentioned my team. So the team is like amazing. So I have an amazing group of people that work in IT, and it's exciting because they're all very dedicated and very enthusiastic about IT, so which makes it easier.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
they seem really, really savvy.
Yeah.
I recognize you snatching the best and brightest from around the county. I've observed the migration and it's very, very interesting. I don't know what your previous job was, with the NSA or whatever. And you're doing a great job with that.
Not allowed to tell you.
Okay. Excellent, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Does anyone have anything else for the good of the order here? We're all wonderful. We're gonna meet on the 3rd, I think. Is that holiday weekend okay, or are we thinking that we might?
This is the 3rd.
Of July.
July 3rd is the next scheduled meeting.
Okay. And there was
I'm
feeling good?
actually gonna be here, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
You may be running the meeting. I could be in Canada. Great. Thank you all.
Terrific.
Anything else you want?
No, and I think that next meeting, just so everyone knows, is going to be at Boulder Creek. We were originally supposed to go to Boulder Creek, but because Highway 9 was still under repair, we were very unsure. And so I think we do want all of our library commissioners and our board members, if you've not had the opportunity to go to Boulder Creek and see what a fantastic renovation that was, we want to make sure people get there and see it. We encourage the public to come out to that meeting because again, we're not in Boulder Creek that often, so it's a great opportunity for our community members to come out. And I'm so glad that we had community members here today. They can express their concerns and opinions, and that's all good feedback for us.
We'll try and keep filling the room,
All right, terrific.
doing library magic. So meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great meeting.